Hello fellow stackers, 365 here, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about what is the better investment, a 10-ounce silver bar or 10 separate individual silver coins. Now there's many discussions that have gone on amongst the stacking community for as long as I can remember, where people are asking questions, what is the better investment? Is it a 1-ounce silver coin? Or is it in fact save up your money and buy a larger piece of silver? Now there's lots of different pros and cons for both, and I'm going to cover them across this whole video, and I want you to decide at the end of today's video, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to stack bars or coins? Now for me personally, I stack a little bit of both. I think there are benefits to owning silver coins and silver bars. Now let's start with some of the benefits to silver coins. Now with silver coins, they are easier to pick up because they are less capital to spend out. You can pick up a silver Britannia for around about 30 to 35 pounds at time of filming this video. So it's very easy to be able to accumulate these. You don't have to have a large savings pot or a huge bank balance to be able to start stacking these. And that is a huge reason why these are so appealing. You can gradually collect them over time, and then you can literally stack them. Buy yourself an empty tube and it will motivate you to grab one of these as and when you have the spare funds. And it's a real fun way of picking up silver without having to save up for the larger pieces. Now another positive with silver coins is if you have, let's say you have 10 ounces of silver here. So the coins you can see in today's video is the same equivalent. This is 10 ounces of silver and this is a 10-ounce silver bar. Say you had your 300 odd pounds locked up with silver coins and you needed to free up a little bit of capital. You needed some money for an unexpected bill, or you just wanted to liquidate because the price of silver had shot up. Now, the beauty of having separate individual silver coins is you don't have to sell the entire 10 ounces in one go. You could literally just sell maybe 3 silver coins, make a little bit of profit, free up some cash if you need it for any emergency bills or whatever's popped up, and that still leaves you another 7 pieces of silver. Now, if we look at the 10-ounce bar, if that was the case and you needed a bit of spare cash, you can't just sell a part of this bar. Well, I suppose you could cut it into pieces, but you would lose the premium and it would be extremely difficult to sell a 10-ounce silver bar cut into 10 individual pieces. So once you've locked your money up in this bar, if you need any spare cash or you need to liquidate, or you want to liquidate because the market has risen up nicely and you want to take some profit, you're forced to sell the whole entire silver bar. Now if we move over and have a little closer look at the 10-ounce silver bar, and let's look at some positives, because there's been a lot of negatives so far surrounding the 10-ounce silver bar versus the coins. But if we start to look at some of the positives of the 10-ounce silver bar, now a 10-ounce silver bar is quite often cheaper to buy than 10 individual coins. Now the reason that is the more silver you buy in one go, the lower the premiums, because it's less production costs. This would have taken less time to produce one piece than it would have taken to produce 10 individual pieces. So therefore, these individual 1 ounces, they contain a higher premium. Now the 10-ounce bar contains a lower premium. If you was to buy this 10-ounce bar with today's current spot prices, you're looking at around about £300 to £310 on the second-hand market. Now if we look at the silver coins, you're looking at around about, let's say, between 33 and 35 pounds to pick up Britannias currently. So you can see that works out slightly more. You're paying around 10 to 30 pounds more if you're picking up 10 individual coins as opposed to picking up 1 silver bar. So that is where these bigger silver bars, and once you go up from 10 ounce, you can get the 1 kilograms. You can even go as high as the 100 ounce bars. Now, if we was to go up to a 100 ounce silver bar, you'd be able to get even better price per ounce than if you was to buy 100 individual coins. So that is the huge advantage of buying a larger silver bar. You can pick them up for cheaper than buying individuals. Another positive is they're easier to store. It's a lot easier to stack and store 10 of these than it would be to stack and store 100 ounces worth of Silver Britannias. Even if you pop these into tubes, that is 4 whole tubes of Silver Britannias. That is a lot more awkward and harder to store than if you was to just get 10 of these bars. Stack them up nice and neat, they're nice and square. You can pop them in a space in your safe, and you can fill up a lot more safe space with the bars over the coins, especially when they're all in their tubes and everything. So there's lots of pluses and negatives for both. In my opinion, I think it's very important to have a mixture of both. I think it's very important to pick up the larger pieces of silver to be able to bring down your average per ounce for your entire stack. And also for storage purposes, like I said, if you've got a smaller safe, you'll be able to get more of these in than if you was to fill it up with coins, especially if your coins you're buying are coming in capsules and they're not just in tubes like these ones were from. So that's why it's important to have a mixture. And also, if you just had the bars, you wouldn't have the option, like I said, of selling fractional pieces of that bar. So that is another reason why it's important to have the coins, like we said at the beginning of the video, because if you need a little bit of cash, you can sell these. You can sell these very, very quickly. It's easier to find a buyer on the second-hand market that has £30 spare than to find a buyer on the market that has £300 spare. So these would be a lot easier to liquidate. Yes, it would take a little bit more time if you had to find 10 individual separate buyers. And again, that's just leading us on to another positive that I've just thought up on the spot: ease of sale. Now, as you get to the larger bars, they become less liquid on the second-hand market. All of these pieces you could take to a coin shop or a bullion dealer and you can liquidate very quickly. But in terms of getting the highest price back and going to the second-hand market, it's a lot harder to find a buyer for a £300 piece versus, like I said, a buyer for a £30 piece. And even if you had to find 10 separate buyers, yes, the work is a little bit more difficult, but it's easier to find 30 buyers that have spare £30 than, like I said, a buyer that has a spare £300, especially as the price of silver continues to rise like we have seen it doing over the last few months. Silver spot price over the last month alone has increased by nearly 10%. So this bar is only going to get more and more expensive to buy. Fast forward 10 years time, this could be worth maybe £500. That is a lot harder to find a buyer for on the second-hand market. Now, if we're looking at selling your silver in the future and the spot price has gone up a considerable amount, you've been holding your silver for, let's say, 20 years, and you don't want the hassle of selling these individual pieces or on the second-hand market, and you just want to go straight into a coin shop or a bullion dealer, it'll be very easy to liquidate if you had more bars, if you was just going to a bullion dealer, because you don't have to worry about all these individual coins. You don't have to worry about them going through and checking every single one to see if it's real or fake. You can just walk in there with your stack of bars. They can chuck them on the Sigma machine or whatever machine they use to verify their metals, and again, it's a lot quicker turnaround. It'll be a lot easier to walk in somewhere with 10 of these than if you walked in with, like I said, 4 tubes worth of silver coins, because every single one would need checking individually. They wouldn't just take your word for it. They wouldn't just take the tubes of Silver Britannias, check the first one and go, yeah, all the tubes are legit. They'd have to take out every single one individually and go through and check every single coin individually to make sure that they're all legit. So there's lots of pluses and negatives for both pieces. Back to what I said, I think personally it's very important to have a little bit of a mixture of both. I don't see why it would make any sense to stack one over the other. Let me know in the comment section what you think. What do you prefer to stack? Maybe you just stack silver bars. Maybe you just stack silver coins. Now we're going to finish with a very, very important point. And I wanted to leave this point till last because this is one of the most important points probably of the whole video. Now when you come to sell your silver, if you don't have your country's currency of silver, so for example, I'm from the UK, so my country's currency is pounds and pence, and these all have face values of £2. So when I come to liquidate these, there is no capital gains tax. So I can liquidate as many of these as I want, and I won't get charged any capital gains on them because they are my country's currency. Now, if you lived in the US and you stacked American Silver Eagles, they have a face value, I believe, of $1. That is your country's currency. So when you come to liquidate, I'm not sure of all the tax rules over in the US, I'm not sure if you get taxed on other pieces, but going from my experience with the UK, if you was to sell your country's currency, which was an American Silver Eagle, for example, you wouldn't get taxed on that either. Like I said, if you do get taxed on capital gains over there. So lots of different things to think about, especially that very last point that we just touched upon. If you're selling large amounts of silver, you want to be getting silver that is capital gains tax exempt. Now, the threshold for capital gains tax is fairly high at the moment here in the UK. I'm not going to quote the exact amount it is now because I don't want this video to be outdated and people refer back to that price in the future. So you do need to go and look it up. But the capital gains tax is quite high at the moment. But there's nothing to say that in the future, the government will bring that capital gains tax exemption barrier down, the bracket down where you get charged capital gains tax, and they might even abolish it completely. So you might not have any limit on how much you have to pay capital gains tax. So whatever you sell, you might get capital gains tax on. So that is another thing to think about when you're buying these bars. These bars have no face value on them. So if they was to completely take away the limit and the threshold before you get charged capital gains tax, you would be charged capital gains tax on this piece straight away, whereas these coins, these particular coins that have a UK face value on them, you wouldn't get charged any capital gains tax regardless of whether they change that bracket up or down. So there we go, that is a very, very important part of today's video and something you definitely need to think about when you're choosing coins versus bars. But that is today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. A little bit of a different video filming in my light box. I haven't filmed in this setup for a while. Sometimes it's quite nice to go back to basics and just get out the light box, get out some silver, talk about some important subjects that surround stacking silver, and just have a little bit of fun with playing around silver whilst the video is recording. So thanks very much for watching. I really, really appreciate all the support. Please give this video a thumbs up, a share, and drop a comment down below if you haven't already. And as always, I hope you have a very nice day. Oh, my legs are aching. That's where I was filming today, under the trees. In the middle of a random park that I drove about 45 minutes to get to. So this is actually my entry into Creative Precious Metals June's video challenge. Hope you enjoyed it. A little bit of a different filming location today. I've got a lot of people staring at me. They saw me walk in there with this and they probably wondered what the hell I was doing. But yeah, walking back to my car now. And yeah, like I said, thanks so much for watching and I hope you all have a very nice day.